Okay, so in this video, we're going to build this page here. Here we have a form view with a drop-down list. Here we have, you can choose a category. Right now, in this grid view here, we're displaying a whole bunch of electronic items. Right, we have a VCR, we have a television, we have a Walkman, actually several boom boxes for some reason. But if I change this to produce, then it only shows two items here. And if I go to pharmacy, then there's some other items. And then if I go to hardware, then it shows just hardware items. Okay, so let me show you how to build something like this. Okay, so here we are in Visual Studio. I'm going to close the start page, leave that there. I'm going to go to File, New, Website, and then I'm going to build, we could call this maybe store database video, and then hit OK. Hit OK here. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go to my Solution Explorer and I'm going to add a database. So click on Add New Item and then look for SQL Server Compact 4.0, and we can leave the default name. Hit Add. Go ahead and create the app folder. Hit Yes. Okay, so now we have our database. And click here on Server Explorer. And here we're going to create some tables. So go ahead and expand or click here on the table icon. Right click, create table. And then here I'm going to put a table for products. I'll call it products. Here I'm going to do product ID. Change the data type to int. Set this as the primary key. And also make it the identity. So hit true on that. Okay. The next thing we need is going to be the product name. We'll leave the default data type and varchar. And then here I'm going to need the category ID. I will set that to an int. Okay, so that's our table. Go ahead and hit OK. Okay, so now we're going to create another table for our categories. So that's category. Here, this is going to be category ID. Set this to int. We'll make this the primary key. Also make sure that this is also an identity. Okay. Now we need the category name. Okay. Then hit OK. Alright, so then now in our tables here, let's go and add some categories. Right? Remember we had electronics, produce, pharmacy, and hardware. So we'll go ahead and add those in our table here manually. So right click on category, show table data, and then here the first one was electronics. The next one could be pharmacy. The next one is produce, and the last one is hardware. Okay, and then just make sure a category ID is assigned, right? Because we set this to identity, so each time we make an entry or add a new record, the ID is automatically added. Okay, so that saves automatically, so we can just close that out. Now go back to Solution Explorer. Right click here on Store Database Video. Let's go and add a web form and leave the default name as default. Hit OK. Alright, so here we have our toolbox. Here we have a page. So what we're going to do is we're going to add what we need. Our website had a form view, it had a drop-down list, and it had a grid view. So let's go and add those here. We'll do it not in design view, we'll do it here through the code. Form view under data, throw that there. Okay. The next thing we need is going to be a horizontal rule, a line. The next thing we need is going to be, let's create a paragraph. And then here I'm going to do choose a category. And then right after that, I'm going to put the drop-down list. Okay. And we can change the default ID from drop-down list to DDL category. Okay, so it should look like that. After our paragraph, let's go ahead and put another horizontal rule. And then at the end, we want a grid view. So grid view there. Okay, so now let's look at this in design view. Okay, so there are 3 items here. So let's configure the form view first so we can start adding records. Click here on the arrow, and then under choose a data source, go to new data source. We're going to use an SQL database. Hit OK. Here I'm going to do database.sdf. Hit next. Leave the connection string. And this form view is for us to enter new products. So we don't want the category table, we want the products table. And then here, make sure that we can actually insert records using a form. So go to advanced and make sure you generate insert, update, and delete statements. So just check box that, hit OK. Alright, so then hit next. There's just no sense in testing the query because we don't have any records yet. So just hit finish. Okay, so then by default, our page here is in read-only mode. So we need to change the default mode on this. Change it to insert. Okay. And then we need to modify the template, the insert item template, because we have this text box for the category ID, and it'd be a better idea to use a drop down. So then you're going to click here on the arrow, and you're going to edit templates, and then once you click on edit templates, click here again, and then where it says item template, we want to change that to insert item template. Right, that's the one we're going to be using. So here I'm going to put some space. I'm going to put the cursor there, press space, space there, and then maybe a space after. I'm going to kill this text box, and I'm going to bring in a drop-down list. Okay, so then now I'm going to edit the data bindings. I'm going to bind it to the category ID. And then hit OK. Then I'm going to choose a data source. And this data source is for products. We need a new data source for categories. So go to New, SQL Database. If I were you, I would change this number from 1 to 2. Hit OK. Choose a connection string. We already have one, so just choose that. Hit Next. This is correct because we want to retrieve all the categories. Hit Next. Now we can test our query. The 4 categories that we set up earlier now show up. Hit Finish. And then here on this last part of the wizard, if you read this question here, select a data field to display in the drop-down list. We don't want to display the ID because the user won't know what category 1 is, what category 2, category 3, but they would recognize the category by name. So we're going to use that as what we want to display. Now it says here, select a data field for the value of the drop-down list. Well, the value is of course the ID because this is the products form, and the product table only holds a category ID. It doesn't hold a category name. So then this is the value we want to use because that's where that's the same as the binding that we set up earlier. Hit OK. And that should be it for that. Okay, let's move on. Here we're going to do the same thing for the drop-down list. We want a new one because SQL data source 2 belongs, it's inside the template here, so we don't have access to it, so we need to create a different one. So I'll hit New Data Source, SQL Database, and just to be on the safe side, we'll set this to 3. Hit OK. Change the connection string, okay, like that. Hit Next. Same thing. Finish. Okay, and then here under select a data field to display in the data drop-down list, make sure you have the category name, and then select the data field for the value of the drop-down list. We'll use the ID. Hit OK. Alright, so then that's configured. Now we want to be able to display products by category. So we're going to need a where clause in this grid view. Depending on what the user chooses here, that'll update the grid view based on the choice they make. But in order for it to reload the page every time we make a modification to the category, you need to make sure, very important step, is that here on this drop-down list that you set enable auto postback. So the minute the user chooses something, it'll call postback and it'll reload the page, and then it'll show the new products based on whatever category was chosen. So just have a auto postback set. Okay. So then now here on the grid view, right click here, choose data source. Let's do a new one, SQL database. We're going to set this to SQL source, I guess number 4. Hit OK. Choose the connection string. Hit Next. Now here we want to display the products, and we want to display only products where the category ID equals whatever the category was chosen from the DDL category from the drop-down list. So then we'll need to put a where clause. So then the column for the where is going to be column ID, where it equals, and then here we have a whole bunch of choices for sources, right? We could base the where clause, the value for the where clause, using a query string, using a cookie, using different things. Here we have a control that we're using. So where category ID equals the category ID from the control. So the control ID, we named it earlier. We called it DDL category. So then once you have that set up, then you need to actually put the where clause here. So click add. Then hit OK. Right, so now we can see the modification to our previous SQL statement. So select all the products where the category ID equals the category ID from the control. That's what this is trying to say here at the bottom. All right, so then hit next. So then we're going to test our query. But the thing is, since we don't have a default value, we're going to be prompted here in the test for category ID. All right, so let's say I chose number 1, that's electronics, so hit OK. If we had any records in our table, then they would have shown up here. But since we have our table is completely empty, we don't show anything. But it's just a way to test it, I guess. So then hit finish. Okay. Okay, so we're ready to try this out. So I'm going to hit play on the Google Chrome button there. Hit OK. Alright, so this is what it looks like at this point. We don't have any records, so we're not going to see anything in the grid view. So let's create something. Alright, so I'm going to insert VCR and then hit the insert button. And you notice how the record went through, but nothing showed up here. Alright. So let's find a way to fix this problem. I'm going to close that out. I'm going to stop debugging. And we're going to try something. I'm not sure if it'll work or not, but hopefully it does. So I'm going to double click on this insert button, and that'll create a event handler. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do let's see if I can get it. Form view 1 dot data bind. So we'll try that. Save it, close it, save the whole thing out. Let's run it again. Alright, so after I reloaded the page, we can see now there's a record. Right, so we have a VCR. Now let's try a DVD player. Let's do insert. Nope, that still didn't work. Okay, well, would refreshing work? Refreshing may not be a good idea, because then it'll keep inserting records from before, which is why I had the whole boombox thing here. But at least for now, we'll keep testing it this way. Let's insert a different item. I'm going to do hardware now, and I'm going to put I'm going to put, let's say, hammer. Hit insert. Okay, so that still didn't work. Let's I mean, it went through, but we just can't see it. Well, if you click here, you can see it. So go to hardware. And no, that still didn't work. Huh. Okay, so close it out. Stop. Run it again. Now go to hardware. Or did we put it in hardware or did we put it in produce? What happened to my hammer? That's not good. Let's try it again. Hammer. Hardware. Insert. Okay, so that didn't work. Alright, so I think the problem is that code we put. So we can fix that. So close. Hit stop. Go back to our insert here. I'm going to get this form view.data bind. I'm going to cut it. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to form view here on top. I'm going to look for item inserted. So after the item is inserted, then we want to call the data bind method. But let's try calling it for GridView. GridView1 dot data bind, and then we'll see if that works. So then save. Go and run it. Okay, so then now I'm going to try inserting the hammer again. Hardware, insert. Do I have a hammer? I have a hammer. Do I have electronics? Yes. Okay, so let's add another item. Let's try DVD player. Insert. Okay, and now the DVD player shows up. So what I had to do was call the data bind method, so that way the page would reload, or this would get the new items that are in the database and reload the grid view. Okay, so here's the description for the data bind method, and I think this was what we needed. Use this method to bind data from a source to a server control. This method is commonly used after retrieving a data set through a database query. Most controls perform data binding automatically, which means that you typically do not need to call this method explicitly. But in our case, because of the fact that we're inserting the record, but we're calling data bind here implicitly, but that's not changing anything here, right? The thing that needs to update or that needs to change is what's in the grid view, right? So that's why in our code, when this event occurs, when item inserted happens, as soon as something is inserted through the form, then we need to get the new data from the data set and then display it in grid view, right? And that's how it actually updates the page. Let's try it one more time. What other items can we insert in here? I don't know, a Dell computer. Insert. Well, that took it twice. But the reason it took it twice is something's wrong with my mouse. my mouse automatically double clicks for some reason, so I need to get a new mouse. So I double click that. Sorry about that. Let's change this. You see, so it's double clicking. Produce, and I'm going to put an apple and make sure it's under produce. Hit insert, and then the apple shows up. I'm going to put a carrot, and then make sure the carrot, oh, I put carrot in electronics, oops. Produce, carrot. Yeah, the problem with my mouse that it's double clicking. I believe that's the issue. Okay, let's try one more time. Produce salad, and I'm gonna try to press it only once. Okay, so I have to be very careful. Something's wrong with my mouse button. It's very sensitive. I need to replace that. But I hope this video was informative. And yeah, if you have any questions, just email me anytime. Thank you.